Welcome to Try This at Home. I'm Cliff Bumgardner.
And I'm Harrison Stewart.
Our myths this week are exploding jawbreaker, static cannon, and
Zap.
killer playing card. This episode originally
Whip.
aired. You trying to find the sound effect for that one?
Yeah, I think Thwip is right.
Thwip is pretty good.
Thwack.
Spider-Man. Yeah, there you go. I was going to say Spider-Man is Thwip, so you got to have
He's
thwack.
known, yes, he's known to thwip, to thwip a few thwips.
This episode originally aired on October 27th, 2004, which makes me think it's a Halloween episode. We've seen that. This kind of fits,
exploding
candy, killer cards. It all kind of fits in that.
I didn't even think about
Yeah.
that.
It's not really yeah.
Like kind of, I know it's not a Tesla tower, but that being like a big special effects thing in horror movies.
Yeah,
perhaps.
it's definitely good. I could see the promos, it's not necessarily in the episode, but I could see promos cut out of this. It's like, will candy explode,
The spookiest episode yet.
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense. Well, it was directed, as always, by Peter Rees. And did you catch it in the credits this week? I'm starting to look at the credits more and more. It was produced, which I think we can also say written, by Andrew Farrell. Friend of the show, Andrew Farrell is back. And I gotta say, this is a good transition to overall thoughts. I felt his touch on this episode. I did not know when I was watching it that this was an Andrew episode. Didn't know until the episode was over and I saw it in the credits. But genuinely, I'm not just saying this because he's a friend of the show. The whole time throughout the episode, my note was just, man, this is well written. There is some complex, difficult stuff to communicate in this episode, and I think 95% of it is done perfectly. And the moments where I felt like I don't quite know what we're testing or why is this going on, almost immediately after I made that note, they would explain, here's why we're doing this, or here's a bit of narration would come in to lay it out. I thought it was funny and really well communicated, and I was thinking the whole time, man, this must have been a monster to put together. And then I saw Andrew's name, so that seems to make sense to me.
It makes sense. Also, I love that the animation is getting better and better.
It really is. They're getting some animation budget at this point in the show.
They're finally working with some animation budget. I just liked the progression of it getting better and better over the course of it. By the end of it, we're gonna have fully rendered Pixar.
Ooh, Adam and Jamie should be in a Pixar
now.
movie. I'd watch that.
They the whole time, or you think if they just showed up as a pair of characters, a la Martin Short and Steve Martin.
I think it should be
that kind of they're a goofy pair, well-known pair.
I think it should be
some side villains.
That overnight in M5, Buster and the other things come to life, like Toy Story. And so then we just get an Adam and Jamie cameo, but the movie is about all of the weird robots. It would basically be, all the weird robots in Sid's room in Toy Story?
Yeah.
It's a movie about them, all in M5.
Okay. That's because it was leaning a little Chucky to me there for a second. Because I was just thinking, if Buster came to life, not sure how pleased he'd be with with this daytime
You
treatment.
ripped off my arms, you blew me up, you threw me off of a building.
Yes. At minimum, he's doing the head spin thing that Woody does too, which also Sid didn't know.
Yeah.
Is Sid really that bad for blowing up toys?
Based on this episode, I'd want there to be a scene where Adam and Jamie are in M5 and you just hear whee and they turn and Buster's feeding playing cards into that crazy machine. But they're metal sharpened playing card, like Gambit kind of style.
Of course.
I'd watch that.
Going to. Buster is on our side. We're avowed Busterites over here on this pod. We
devotees to the Church of Buster.
Absolutely. So if he does come to life, bit of a prophecy fulfilled, I think.
Myth 1, exploding jawbreaker. So this is really interesting. We haven't seen something quite like this on the show before, where they say at the very beginning, This is totally true. This is not about can this happen. This is about how this might have happened based on these horrifying real stories that they show with news footage of children who had been burned by exploding jawbreakers. Well, really weird start. I mean, good in terms of the storytelling, but weird start to this one.
Especially since this is one of those that I would have at the outset said no, probably not.
Right.
That just doesn't sound. First of all, I didn't know that there were humans, living people, that were trying to put a jawbreaker all the way in their mouth. That was that was incredible news to me.
Yeah,
absolutely out of control. First of all, you just don't buy jawbreakers. I'm not personally aware of many people that were just known for getting the, like, it's not even golf ball, man. It's like
almost
baseball size.
Yeah.
Like,
I always think of, like, when I picture jawbreakers here, where us being in the South, I think of like Myrtle Beach, like going to the candy shops in Myrtle Beach, and there's always like those ridiculously oversized jawbreakers and lollipops and gummy bears and whatnot.
You know, I can see that. I can definitely see that. I personally wasn't able to stop thinking about Ed, Edd, and Eddy. And actually, the more that I thought about it, the more I kind of thought that the joke was that you can't fit it all in your mouth. Like, that they're constantly doing that because they're cartoon characters. But, like, I was shocked when later in this myth you see, like, the full Jaws construction and, like, it actually will fit in there. I don't know who's testing that. I don't think I could do that now.
Well,
much less as a child with a child jaw. I just
that is the thing about this myth. It's obviously horrible. I mean, some of the footage of the girl who got burned by this thing is just horrific. It's so I don't.
I mean, we're talking like appeared to have skin grafts.
Yeah.
Right. Like I mean that like
terrible burns from this. And like I don't in any way want to make light of how terrible it is, but it made sense that it was kids for exactly what you just talked about, trying to put it in your mouth all the way, and also that they would heat it. That was something that I was like, man, that seems like a bad idea, not because it would explode, but because you would just have molten sugar, period. But the fact that it was kids doing this, apparently unsupervised, just, whatever, it did make sense. And it really, I feel like a season ago, they would have saved that for the end. They would have done this whole myth of can jawbreakers explode, and then they would have showed you. This to me is so much better. Even as horrific as it is, they set the scene with, no, this is real and it's bad, and here's why you should care about it, because these kids got hurt. Let's figure out why this happens. It almost makes it it's not really a myth in terms of, it's not like we're going to see if it's true. It's an experiment and a public service announcement of like, here's what not to do, and that's what we're going to investigate throughout this episode. Completely different, but I thought a really good setup.
It works backwards, right?
Yeah.
It already has the conclusion of like, we know this happened. Let's think of perfectly reasonable scenarios that this could cause this.
Right, and kind of look into the science of why this could happen.
Yeah.
It's very interesting from a storytelling perspective, different than what we've seen, but really worked. Like I felt like it was the right approach for this material, especially, again, considering how serious it is. I don't think you would want to do this episode and have Adam and Jamie making jokes and making light of it the whole time and then cut to the footage of kids who had been hurt. Like, that would feel really weird. So like the way that they did it's a difficult kind of thing, but I think they did it really well.
I agree.
The basic plan here is just to test, like I said, how could this have happened? What are the theories behind heating a jawbreaker and how it could lead to this sort of explosive reaction? And the first thing they talk about is the temperature differential. The idea that a jawbreaker is multiple layers. They actually cut a jawbreaker up on a bandsaw, which was so satisfying to see. Like, it was like the core of a planet, like all the different layers of jawbreaker going all the way down. But they basically talk about that because of the way it's made, the inner core is much softer and can actually melt and heat and melt much faster than the outer core of candy. So you could have a molten middle and a perfectly reasonable, outer shell that you can pick up and manipulate or whatever, and wouldn't think it was that hot. It's like a sugary hot pocket of doom with this thing. It's really
pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It's a really terrifying idea, and Jamie pretty much right away, like, that's his theory, and it bears out. They heat it, and you see that the middle of the Jawbreaker is molten, outer shell not even touched. It was really terrifying. It's like a grenade.
Well, but that's why it's really good that they went through like how it's made, because I didn't know that. You know?
They had like a mini Unwrapped episode right in the middle of their show.
It was good. It worked. It definitely. I'm still having trouble figuring out how that can happen. Yeah. Where like they were able to just like hold the outside and the middle is like melting at an extraordinary rate.
It's like makes a time bomb because I mean, you imagine a kid holding that thing and not knowing that the inside is and they also said that was the other big point of the temperature thing, is that as it would get hot, it would expand. Which is what could ultimately cause the explosive force, not just that they bite into it and it's hot, but that it actually could rupture if it was bit into and throw that molten candy everywhere. We did get a moment of Jamie. Normally it's Adam on this show hurting himself. We've talked about that many times. This time it's Jamie who sticks his finger in molten sugar. And let's just listen to his pained reaction, shall we?
Ow. Really retains the heat. You could get seriously burned with this. In fact, I think I did.
In fact, I think I have been injured. As a matter of fact, I believe I just chopped off my hand, and it is quite painful at this. He's a robot. Jamie's not a real boy.
There are a few moments in this episode in particular in which he just... This is a big I Love Jamie episode for me.
It is.
Because in each of the myths, we get a moment like this of just him being like, oh, I have just the thing. Beep, boop, 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 boop. Or just like getting in painful situations and just, ow. Like, that's it. Oh, it's amazing. He's amazing.
Like, it's like, has he undergone like Navy SEAL torture training or something? Like, what? How is this man so perfectly composed at all times?
He's always like this.
Yeah.
It's incredible. There's no phasing the man. I think back to Buried Alive, where he was just like, oh, okay, I think I'm going to need to get out now. And that was like as much as we got. Like, you don't need to
thinking about sex a lot.
He's just thinking about sex a lot. That's it.
Maybe that's why he's so chill all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the internal monologue that's going on at all times. So he's just like, what am I bothered about? You should see the movie that's on projection inside this dome.
It's just the word sex on the projector.
He's just thinking about the word, not even the action. He's just imagining the word.
That's what's playing on the screener in his mind, yes.
You mentioned this earlier, but this is where we see them build a mechanical jaw. Tori has to actually build a jaw that can bite with the same force as a human. And on the first test, they were using actual dentures, and the teeth broke. And there was like, I don't know what it is, but like that, I had a bigger reaction to that than Jamie did to sticking his hand into molten sugar. I was just watching the show going, ow, 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 ow.
Yeah, and again, and I think this is a good time to bring it up. How are you supposed to consume one of these things?
Oh, yeah. Like, how are you actually
supposed to eat a
No, that's not a
rhetorical question. I don't know. Like,
I've never had one.
The more this episode progressed, the more I was just like, but what is the actual method
because
it's consuming one of these?
It's too big to just like put in your mouth for a while.
Yeah.
You can't just like wear it down.
You just kind of lick on it.
You just kind of lick on an orb. It's very strange. I was never a Jawbreaker kid. I never like fruit candies and hard candies were not my thing. I was a chocolate kid, and so this was very strange to me. And I don't think I've ever had one. I don't know what you're supposed to do.
I think historically they were supposed to be relatively cheap. So that was like an incentive behind it. Is that it was like a candy that you could keep and like be working on for like a very long time. The
trade-off is it may scald your child.
It may horribly scald your child, break their teeth, possibly both. I don't know.
Choke if they put this entire billiard ball in their mouth.
But it's cheap.
And it lasts a long time.
Yay. It's a good trade-off. Now, I also just don't, every time that I've run into them, they've not been inexpensive at all. Like you were talking about earlier, like seeing them at the beach at like one of those types of candy stores. Like, I just, they're not cheap. So I don't really know. And now I know that they can explode.
I just Googled it. And on Amazon, there's a giant Jawbreaker that looks, it's a little bit bigger than what they were using on the show. This one's like 3 3/8 of an inch. So it's a big dude, but it's $22.
Okay.
This is what
I'm saying.
What is the purpose of these in the world other than to hurt people? Like,
I think it might just be that. I think it might just be all along we've been worried about razor blades and candy when what we really needed to be concerned about was the exploding horrible death candy itself.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
it was right in front of us the whole time, Cliff.
Yeah, I'm looking at all these online and they make them in like increasingly huge sizes. There's a colossal Jawbreaker that is 6 pounds and cost $65. What are you supposed to do with that?
Better question. Can we write it off? Can it be reasonably considered a show expense? I don't know. We won't heat the core because they told us very specifically with this one in particular, which I feel like, one, it's partly that it's dangerous, but just like how kid involved this one is and how outwardly dangerous it ended up being, I can see why they put special emphasis this time.
Yeah,
on, but for real,
but seriously,
yeah, and also everything that this myth involved, you have at home, presumably,
right?
You know,
right.
So that was another. I feel like they did a really good job of emphasizing. And seriously, guys, we know this one doesn't involve a flamethrower, but do not freaking do it.
That's actually a good point. All three of these myths, really. I mean, the sandblasting, maybe not quite so much, but they do. I mean, they're dealing with static electricity and in large quantities. That's not an entirely foreign thing, but especially the playing cards and the Jawbreaker. Yeah, you can just grab them in your house and start chucking them at people. So the warnings are good. Before we move off of this candy website where they have this Jawbreaker, I just want to read a line to you. I didn't have this in my show notes, and we're doing this on the fly. Okay. But there's a frequently asked questions page, and it says, "How fresh will my candy be?" And the response is, "So fresh it will have to move in with its auntie and uncle in Bel Air."
You know, that was worth stopping the show for. I'm not going to lie to you.
It's funnier than anything you're going to hear in the rest of the show. It's funnier than anything we had planned. So why not?
Thank you, whatever candy site, for throwing us a bone. Honestly. Yeah,
quite amazing. I'm not going to plug the site just in case. I don't want people to go buy a 6-pound Jawbreaker because that seems ridiculous. But quite funny. Good on them.
Light Googling if you wish to partake. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, you can find it. It's out there.
$65.
When I was watching this episode, I got really excited on your behalf. I actually have a note about you because once they break the dentures, they then have to make steel teeth. And it's straight up James Bond.
You know me too well.
I just said Harrison must be so happy right now.
I had Jaws in my note. It's actually not even the only like Bond-ish thing that we're going to run into in this episode.
Quite a bit, yeah.
I had to kind of like pick and choose which Bond references I want. But yes.
Well, that's new that you pick and choose which Bond references to put.
Usually I just throw them all in. The whole damn kitchen sink, brother. It's all coming. Why not? It's Jaws. It's Jaws. It's the silliest Bond villain of them all.
It was pretty great. These metal teeth that they make to actually do the test. It's another one of those like, God, I would love to have that on my shelf kind of devices that they make. It's so cool.
Terrifying. Because they look pretty scary by the end of it.
Yeah. And initially when they start testing this, it was kind of nice to see that it's not apparently super easy to get a Jawbreaker heated the right way to make this happen. So the first few tests, they don't break through the Jawbreaker, nothing happens. Then they finally get it, quote unquote, right. And holy crap, we haven't seen something quite like this happen in a while on the show. The Jawbreaker explodes and both Adam and Christine get nailed with molten sugar. And like, unass the room. Not even like, with the famous "Am I missing an eyebrow?" That's like a ho, and then immediately everybody's laughing. This is like pop. People start running. It looks crazy. Christine just screams and grabs her face and goes running. We have not seen a moment like that yet on the show. This was crazy.
Yeah, this one felt bad to me. I felt very bad for Christine. Like, I know that. I think the difference for me with this one is that because I went back and forth because we've also like every Mythbuster kind of puts their body on the line.
Totally.
That's a thing. Christine was not prepared to do so. In this instance, I think that's what made it stand out for me. I mean, you're right. The production kind of like pauses, in that moment to be like, oh, whoa, is everyone okay?
Well, and I was surprised. It looked like that
she was standing far away.
Well, and the Jawbreaker was in some sort of containment-ish thing, but I guess, I don't know if it didn't have sides or what, didn't have a piece. I would have thought you would put this in like a blast shield box, because the whole idea is this thing's supposed to explode molten sugar everywhere, and they have video of people this has happened to. So I was surprised at how kind of relaxed they seem to be. Maybe it's the kind of thing of, as we said, the first few didn't work, and so maybe this is one of those like, wouldn't you let your guard down kind of things.
That's what it seemed like to me, because it took a while to get to the stage.
Yeah.
But
thankfully, Christine was okay. She did have some burns on her face. Adam got hit in the arm. And it was, from a storytelling perspective, it was kind of a beat of reminding you the stakes, right? That this stuff is, not only can it happen, basically it's confirmed right here. Not that we didn't know that it could happen, but they replicate it almost straight away. And the rest of the myth is going to become testing other ways that this could happen, because they did have some difficulty getting the Jawbreaker right in the microwave to create the conditions where this could happen. And so that now they're going to, play with other ideas. But having those stakes right off the bat of, remember, this is actually really, really dangerous. And, to your point, don't do this, because it brought a different element to the show than I think we've seen so far.
I agree.
It's small, it's relatable, and it's really dangerous, and you know that it's true, which is kind of brutal.
So absolutely don't just do this not in a super controlled setting, because even in a super controlled setting, there's still an element of danger there.
Totally. This is where I did get a little bit confused for a moment as to what these next tests were supposed to prove or disprove, but I thought they did a good job of kind of wrapping it back at a certain point. So basically, the next idea is to say, what are some other factors that could weaken the candy or make it more likely for this to happen, or some other scenarios? And the idea is that the candy could have been contaminated, that there was actually like a chemical reaction, that during the manufacturing process, something got in the candy that wasn't supposed to be there. They're using caustic soda, which is, I believe, used in manufacturing. So it's not ridiculous that it could contaminate a batch of the candy, and it's super dangerous. And so they make a mix of broken up Jawbreakers and caustic soda, put it in a microwave and in a toaster oven, and it just catches fire right away. It's just far more dangerous and more flammable than just the Jawbreaker on its own. Really scary looking.
Yeah, it's pretty immediate.
Yeah. Yeah. They're even like, did you notice the camera is on Adam and I think he's making fun of Jamie, and then all of a sudden you see the whoo of the flames, just like the light falls on Adam's face and the camera can't even get it. It was just this moment of like, oh crap.
Okay, but this was the second time in the episode that, again, Jamie, because a fireball went up and he is next to two other people that are like, oh, and he's just like, oh. Like, he definitely reacts, but again, it's just so contained. He's got the lid on that.
Jamie's the one, like, I want to be in a foxhole with Jamie. You know, if you gotta be in the stuff, I want somebody as cool as Jamie, because he does not lose it for anything.
No. Like, he says, we're making it out of here. I'm like, aye, aye, Capitan.
Yep, I will follow you into battle, sir. Yeah. Lead the way.
To the gates of hell, Jamie.
I've got my Jawbreaker grenades. I'm going to start chucking them at the enemy. Let's go. I'm ready.
Bang.
The next idea, the last thing that they tested, which I thought was a really interesting and kind of made this a little bit more practical, was whether or not the plastic packaging on a Jawbreaker could have some sort of effect. And it didn't ultimately, but what was more interesting about this test to me was they wanted to replicate leaving a Jawbreaker out in the sun, which is totally something you could see a kid doing. And so they put it in a toaster oven on low radiant heat, left it in there for a while. And it didn't explode on this particular test, but it does get molten in the middle. The conditions are there for that to happen. So it's not just that you have to put this in a microwave. You could leave it out, which a kid would totally do, and create the same sort of circumstances, which was, I mean, again, this whole thing is terrifying.
That feels easier than it should be.
Right?
I guess that's my concern. That feels like something that could reasonably happen. Whereas, like, to some extent, the Jaws, you know, it's exerting the right force that a human can do, but not, it still has metal teeth.
Right.
You know? It's still Jaws from the James Bond series.
It was weird during all the testing with the packaging, because they had to leave the packaging on. They had to blur the branding.
That was funny.
It's just a handheld Jawbreaker, so the blur was on everything.
Yeah.
So it looked like they were doing something very explicit. It looked like they had something very explicit in that toaster oven. I don't know what it would be, but it looked bad.
Let's see if it can handle a toy.
They went back to the sex shop and started.
Yeah. You know, they just shopped around for a bit. Like, oh, we forgot that one has a battery in it. Oh no.
Oh
no. This was I don't know that this one necessarily qualifies as I'll change the way I live my life, because I don't know that I was really at danger of ever getting a Jawbreaker, but pretty certain now to no.
Yeah.
No, I'm just not going to do that.
Well, it does. You know what that makes me think of? We've talked about in the past with certain myths of, like, if their findings implicated a brand, would they be able to say it publicly? I think this kind of puts an end to that discussion, because Jawbreakers are a very common candy. There's a lot of companies that make them that probably advertised on Discovery at the time. And here Mythbusters are going, no, this stuff's really dangerous and you shouldn't let your kid mess around with it. And they did it. So, I mean, I think that's kind of cool in a way.
In the heat, I guess.
Yeah. Don't.
Also, what big Jawbreaker brands do you know are advertising with?
Well, I would imagine that it's like Mars, you know, or it's all these conglomerates.
I really like imagining a boardroom like Jawbreaker Incorporated. Big Jawbreaker is pissed off their
and
rockers.
The CEO is Jaws from Bond, sitting at the boardroom table.
We're so sorry, Mr. Jaws. We don't know who gave them the green light. Don't worry. We'll take care of it. And then, just like to show he approves, he just takes a chomp out of the boardroom desk. And they all stand and clap. Jawbreaker Inc.
Good to the Mythbusters for standing up to Big Jawbreaker, you know? The Jawbreaker
Brave.
Industrial Complex. Not on this show.
So brave.
So brave.
Not. We are not sponsored
by anyone.
Right. but definitely not by Big Jawbreaker.
By Big Jawbreaker.
We will never. Hey, that's a pledge to you, listener. No matter how hard times get, we will never take Big Jawbreaker money.
So, the Mythbusters have conclusively proved that Jawbreaker plus microwave plus steel teeth equals scalded myth turn.
Myth 2, static cannon. So, interesting story on this one about a construction worker who finds a PVC pipe and needs to use it, but needs to get something off of it. So he sandblasts it, which actually builds up static in the pipe. And when he walks around to do something nearby, the now electrified cannon of sorts fires, discharges the static, and kills him instantly. You know, that old chestnut.
Sure.
Quite a story, but also a very Mythbusters story. Like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, that feels right at home. That feels right at home here.
It does.
Not something I was familiar with. Had you ever heard anything even close to this before?
Nah.
Yeah.
You can't. No. Like from static electricity. Like, again, we've been over this. I don't science. But I just don't. That sounds very, very, very unreasonable to me. That anything could. Now, I definitely think in the realm of what is a lie that sounds like it could be somewhat plausible, it's definitely trending that way, but I still just think, like, I don't know, building up enough. I don't think you and your daily goings on can build up enough static to just, like, you know, Emperor Palpatine window out the window.
That is a good pull. I'm not even going to add to it. That's such a good pull. I'm just going to let that one go. That was good. One of the first things they do in this, which is not a big beat in the episode, but I did have a note about it. They go to see an electrical engineer to talk about the validity of this potential myth. And she basically says exactly what we just did. That, probably not. But when they first introduced her, they said her name was Susie C. And I didn't know until her lower third came up that her last name is spelled S-E-E, like the word C. I heard Susie C and thought that they were anonymizing her for some reason. And I was like, what is she hiding? Who is this electrically? What is she? Is she working on the Manhattan Project? What is going on?
Yeah. Well, you know how dangerous the world of static electricity study is.
Apparently so. Yeah, it really, like,
anybody could be watching. You think you want the Chinese knowing what we know about static electricity, Cliff?
I was all in my notes, just like, oh, this is gonna be a whole character, and then the lower third came up, and her last name is, it just sounds that way. Okay.
Yeah, she is not there for long. This is one of those instances, especially since talking to Griffiths about, like, how the show is constructed. This was one of those where I couldn't stop thinking about, I wonder how long this interview actually was.
Yeah.
To get us roughly a minute and a half of runtime.
I thought about that. It's funny you say that. I thought about that throughout this entire myth specifically because it's so complex. They go in, once again, we get into amps and volts and the whole how many milliamps could kill you and all this kind of stuff. And they're doing all these tests with the cannon. It's not an easy thing to shoot because you're talking about static electricity building up in something.
Right.
So it's difficult to visualize. I was just imagining, those boxes and boxes of tapes. Like, you just get this and it's like, hey, make sense of this. Made my brain hurt. Like, ever since we talked to Anthony about that, and in this episode in particular, I was like, wow, this is a ton of work to make this make sense as well as it does.
And to just, like, get it into, like, it's crazy to think about the amount of footage taken to get it down to, like, a tight 44. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It really is.
Which is why it was also interesting to hear him talk about, like, it felt slow to me. I'm like, it does not. I still don't think it feels that way. Like, at all.
No, it's especially now, episodes like this where you have 3 myths. We've had 2 the last couple of weeks. Now we're up to 3 per episode, and it just moves. It just trucks through each myth. it helps the pace of the show overall. But it's kind of amazing to watch them have to, break these things down. When you have more myths in an episode and you have less time, each one has to be explained more simply, which is, I think, part of the reason I was thinking about this as a real writer's episode, because some of this stuff is very complex to try to get in people's heads. And as you mentioned, the animation helps a lot as they're trying to explain it. Great storytelling throughout this whole thing, because it's not easy stuff. Yeah. Again, this is another myth where they kind of just test it straight ahead at first, and they build their cannon out of a big piece of PVC pipe, set it up on non-grounded stands, because that's a point that they made, that right from the jump, the idea that this thing was on metal stands would have grounded it and made this very unlikely to happen. And then they need a way to actually touch the pipe and measure the amount of electricity. So, of course, Adam just happens to have an animatronic hand they can use.
Naturally.
Just laying around.
Just on hand.
Oh.
Cut it.
Oh, no, that's going to stay in. You know that's staying in.
Dang it. And I just drop a horrible word so that you have to cut the section.
Yeah, I mean, this is again, that just one of the things you love about the show is that these weirdos, later on, Jamie will do the same thing of just like, oh, I happen to have one of those. And he comes back with it. And here it's just like they all of a sudden cut to Adam just like with a Wizard of Oz looking device.
Yeah.
Like something strange. It's crazy.
Like an automaton.
Yeah. Oh, I just happen to have
early
this
science fiction-y. Yeah.
The very first test on this pretty much blows the myth away from the beginning, because they sandblast the pipe and the static charge actually goes down, which they later explain that the sand, the dust in the air, would actually make this more unlikely to happen. It would help dissipate the electricity, having that in the environment around this. So right off the jump, it doesn't work. And they pivoted here to something that this is another one of those moments where I was like, what are we actually testing for here? What is this all about? And I thought they brought it around. They build a Van de Graaff generator, which I did have to look up how that is spelled and pronounced, because I absolutely had no idea. And in the process, I found that you can buy these on Amazon.
How much?
$379.99.
Right off.
Maybe it's part of my set. Put it back here.
Exactly.
Because these are little desktop ones.
Wait, how big is it?
It looks like it's about like this, like
I was
like
imagining
torso sized for our listeners.
Torso size.
Yeah, it's not as big as the one on the show. This is more for like science classroom kind of stuff.
Okay, well, and it'll make my hair go up.
Yeah, that was one of the pictures on the Amazon listing.
Okay. Yeah, I might need to get one for the show and just have my hand on it at all times. And that's the science that I bring to the show.
Just zapping things in your office during the show.
Likely the camera, and then it just shuts off. And
the microphone blows up
in my face. There's Jawbreaker inside. Oh!
Yeah, this is the thing I actually do recommend that people get buy one of these, because it is really cool. They built a huge one on the show, and Jamie says that he's a little bit worried that, this thing is really powerful. This is much bigger than you typically build. It could even be deadly, and then immediately ask Carrie to stick her head on it.
Right.
It's like hard cut from this could be very dangerous too. Well, you've got hair. Go over there.
This, by the way, is like the only part in the episode that she's even in. It's just like she shows up to be in danger. Yeah.
Yeah, she just appears to be in danger and to zap Adam's butt.
Which, let's be real, that whole sequence was one of the most marvelous ones in the whole show. When everyone is just zapping each other and has nothing to do with the myth anymore.
As evidenced by the fact that they play that like 5 times in the course of this episode. Every ad break is like, coming up, stop zapping my butt. Coming up, stop zapping my butt.
My butt, stop zapping it.
They clearly knew what they had with that sequence.
I mean, it was just delightful because like one person does it, then Carrie does it, and then Jamie does it. And even Jamie is like,
I did have the thought that I think we got a little bit of foreshadowing here because they decide to prank Adam by telling him that it's not working and having him come in and touch it and it zaps him.
Yes.
A version of that is gonna happen later in the show to far less comical ends. So I did feel like, whoa, this is interesting to see the funny version of it, the lighthearted version of it here, because I'm pretty sure it's this season. We're gonna see not such happy times in the M5 shop.
Well, I can't wait for that, and I've got to give it to Jamie's acting skills. Like when he calls him over and is like, "It's not working," he's like eating, which was really smart.
He Brad Pitted it. He Brad Pitted it.
I think that Adam assumed they couldn't be rolling because he was eating.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, we just can't figure out what's wrong with it. He sells that, man. He sells that whole scene. Adam,
and then runs away like a little boy.
Like a little school child.
Adam just looks at him and Jamie's like, tee hee hee, and just runs away. It's so satisfying.
It's pretty amazing.
Those moments of humanity from Jamie are just like beautiful little flowers because there's so much of what we played earlier on the show. To see it here is just great.
Yes. Last thing, when they do kind of like the creation of Adam,
yes,
and they like zap each. I think they added that in post.
What, the sound or the
sound and like the lightning bolt.
Oh,
it was just that the footage wasn't slowed down, so like I feel like you wouldn't be able to see that clear. It's a dumb note. Scratch
I don't know. No, that's a good question though, because you do see it when they touch the orb itself. Yes. You can see that very clearly.
Yeah, it's a little zap. This is like a big. Yeah, this is the big boy. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm starting the conspiracy. I want the fans to comb through it, the original footage, find out if it's manipulated. Get back to us, Cliff. What's the email?
Try this athomepod@gmail.com.
That. Email us. Please. We need you. Thank you.
You just invited conspiracy theories in our inbox. You know that, right?
In my view, that's a conspiracy. So
their last kind of leap. Oh, and we should say, to wrap that up, that whole thing with the Van de Graaff generator, nothing to do with the myth. It is purely there to illustrate visually electricity and what they're talking about, and to show you big zaps of electricity being safe. That is what I realized in watching that sequence. Is that's all it's about. Is at the end, Jamie's like, if this doesn't do it, then this pipe isn't going to. And I actually was like, okay, that's brilliant. What a great way to realize, well, we didn't get any visuals off of that pipe. We need something that we can show. Actually, show, don't tell, and bring it to the audience that way. And it was great. It's, again, great storytelling.
Here's everyone zapping Adam's butt.
Exactly. No notes. The last thing they're going to try is essentially they bring back the Leyden jar, which we first saw back at our explosive cell phone myth. We've seen it a few times throughout the show. And the idea is to essentially make the entire pipe into a big Leyden jar. So they paint it with metallic paint to see if they can get it to retain more electricity. It does, but it's still not nearly enough to be anything approaching dangerous. And this is where they revealed that, number one, PVC isn't great at holding a charge anyway. And the sand in the air actually would help dissipate the electricity. So this one is like busted all the way down from the beginning. But a lot of fun to get there.
The voltage dropped from 4,000 to 0, and we had a 20 milliamp jump. That's totally not nearly enough to hurt anybody.
Myth 3, Killer Playing Card. Also called in this episode Killer Deck, which is not as good of a name.
Killer Deck?
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. Question here is very simple. Can you kill someone with a playing card?
With a deck.
Yeah. Can you throw a playing card fast enough to actually kill somebody? This has kind of vibes, and they actually get to this in the throughout the course of the myth of the penny drop myth. It's kind of it's a similar-ish question here of can you take a small object and propel it fast enough to do to do real damage?
Yes.
Great question.
Because
great setup.
Because there's nothing else in my mind at this point other than Mythbusters and the James Bond film franchise, I immediately thought of Odd Job.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. That didn't even occur to me.
That was I know it's his hat, but it's a similar thing where it's like that shouldn't be able to do it, but if you threw it with enough force, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I actually think that the Odd Job hat gets tested at some point on the show. I think in one of the later James Bond specials. I think we get there. So we have a long-term payoff with all this James Bond discussion. Eventually we're going to get to that episode and it's going to be so worth it.
It's that I'm setting you up for it. It's not that I literally cannot help myself. It's the one where I'm an active agent, actually. So
totally.
That's why I'm good at podcasting.
You meant it the whole way through. It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
We got in this myth one of the coolest cameos we have yet gotten on the show, and I am so excited to talk about it. We get the man, the legend, Ricky Jay. How excited! I was really hoping. When I was doing my prep for this episode, I was like, I know that Harrison's going to have to know who Ricky Jay is. I hope he's as excited as I am. And then you started texting me, Ricky Jay. And I was like, yes, I'm so pumped to talk about this guy.
He top of season 2, obviously, but now he's in contention for the crown. He's coming after the wolf. He's coming after Dr. Smells. This guy is unreal. This guy is on camera for maybe collectively 5 minutes. And what an impactful 5.
Oh my God. So to set the stage for folks who don't know, Ricky Jay, legendary magician, performer, television personality, and actor. The movies this man has been in, The Prestige,
yes,
Boogie Nights, Magnolia. I mean, oh my God, just hit after hit after hit. Literally wrote the book on killer playing cards. They make that point in the episode. He is famous and known for throwing playing cards. He used to throw playing cards in his show into watermelons. They don't do that in the episode, but there is footage online if you want to check that out. And he describes himself and his playing card throwing skills. He can do it better than we can. Let's let him do it.
Well, some people have called me the leading hurler of martial projectiles in the world.
What a boss.
What people? I need to know what people. I need to know who's wording it this way.
He's got some weird friends. It doesn't surprise me one bit.
It doesn't surprise me either, but I also love that this entire segment opens with him firing them at Adam. Yeah. And they have a little moment. So I didn't immediately put 2 and 2 together that I had seen this guy before. But I was like, you know what? He's actually he's a really good actor, really decent little actor. He insults Adam beforehand. And I was like, who is this? And I was like, oh, okay. You are actually a very well-respected stage person. You have been doing this for decades.
Yeah.
You're in one of my favorite movies, The Prestige.
And Ricky Jay unfortunately passed away in November of 2018. He's no longer with us. But weirdly enough, I actually have a very minor connection to Ricky Jay, which is another reason I was so excited to see him in this show. Years ago, there was a fantastic documentary made about his life, which you can still find online. It's called Deceptive Practice, The Mysteries and Mentors of Ricky Jay. I highly recommend it. And I interviewed the filmmakers for that for a magazine article. It's one of the only magazine cover stories I've ever done. I got to interview them. I did not get to talk to Ricky, but I got to talk to the filmmakers about capturing his story, what it was like, got to see the documentary in advance. And so I've been a Ricky Jay fan for a very, very long time, and was incredibly sad when he passed away because I never actually got to meet Ricky himself. But I got to play a little bit of a part in his documentary, at least, and seeing him here made me super happy. He is just a total legend.
Did you know he was going to be in this episode?
So when I saw Killer Playing Card, my first thought was, oh my God, that reminds me of Ricky Jay. And then I saw on the IMDb that he was listed as being in the episode, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be him actually in M5, or if they were going to use footage from his show. Because that's something that he did. You can go on YouTube and find a television special of one of his shows. And in the show, he's throwing playing cards into watermelons. He's throwing them into the crowd. He's doing all this stuff. So I wondered if they were going to use footage of that. And then when I actually saw that they had him in M5, it made me really happy. It made me really happy to see because he's such a cool guy.
We got to ask Adam about that.
Yeah. When we have Adam back at the end of the season, we got to remember to talk to him about Ricky Jay because I'm sure it seems like somebody that he would have stayed friends with or already been friends with.
Yeah.
They seem like they were in those similar circles. So, yeah, if you guys don't know or haven't seen more about Ricky Jay, go find that documentary. It's online. It is well worth your time because the dude's a legend. And if you're a Mythbusters fan and love this kind of weird stuff, you will love Ricky Jay. So the Ricky Jay section out of the way, the fandom section here out of the way. This is, again, a pretty straightforward idea. Ricky can throw cards a lot faster than Adam, but Adam, very good at throwing cards, it turns out.
Yeah.
It's like this whole season, Adam has been presented as, look at this goofball. And finally, it felt really nice to see Adam just like, no, this is a thing he's really good at. And he's just standing there just bam, 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 bam.
Okay, but the funniest part about that is all of that notwithstanding, the narration is still like, hours wasted have finally paid off. I was like, oh, dude. Like,
a wasted childhood comes. Yeah.
Spent all of his time on stupid crap like this. It's like
even the thing that he's good at
doing it.
They have to give him crap for. Even the thing that he's excellent at.
Oh,
they have to, man. And they just know the character so well at this point and play into it. It's hilarious. But since they need to throw the cards as fast as they possibly can, we get another Adam and Jamie build-off. It is becoming such a part of the show at this point. Adam and Jamie are each going to build rigs to throw playing cards. Mm-hmm. And once again, Jamie builds a completely diabolical, purely efficient, absolutely terrifying device, and Adam's doesn't work.
Adam's is elegantly designed. It is... It has a minor functional problem, but, apart from that,
I love that.
Gorgeous.
Jamie, they have this interview clip of Jamie being like, well, you can tell the quality of an engineer by the simplicity of their design. And if a design is too complicated, then that's a problem with the engineer. Cut to Adam. With his like 3 different hinges that all have to work together at the same time in order to throw it's a complete disaster.
To simulate the sideways motion of the throw.
Yes.
Which that's what's so funny is you would think that the guy who actually knows how to do this himself would have produced like the machine that most closely replicated it, but no.
But that's really interesting. I had the same thought. Adam built, it's almost like he was too close to it. He built a rig to simulate what the human arm would do in throwing a card. Jamie doesn't have any of that kind of bias, for lack of a better term, and just focuses on shoot card fast as possible.
Yeah. Shoot card fast, far.
Fast, far, hard. Go.
Yeah.
And it's a real, like, it shows how their brains work. Again, every time we get these comparisons, you just see these two minds. Adam is very much, he makes fingers for him that kind of having a, going back to that automata type hand thing that he made, it kind of has a similar feel of he's trying to replicate the actual human movement and even the aesthetics and all of that in his rig, and it just doesn't work. But it is pretty cool what he makes. It just, as Jamie says, it's very clever. It just sadly doesn't work. Jamie's rig, however, throws playing cards at 70 miles per hour off the jump. It's burying them like halfway into that foam block.
It is, which I honestly didn't even know that. Like, I really haven't seen somebody throw it hard enough that it could get embedded in anything, much less like a foam block, and then later the like ballistics gel.
Yeah. Did you notice that I think it was the foam block specifically, the cards were hitting so hard that they were like, the back end of the card was bending.
Yeah.
It was actually warping, and the force was incredible.
Didn't like that. Did not like that. This is news to me. I did not know that you could do that kind of damage with one of these things.
Well, thankfully, it turns out that even at high speeds, it's only so dangerous, but it is no less terrifying.
Yeah.
And this is another, it's been one after another in this episode. Jamie's rig spins so fast that the plastic wheel actually shatters and hits Adam right in the boob.
Yep.
Just flies off, hits Adam. Could have gone in an eye very easily.
Yep.
Could have been way worse than it was. Thankfully, it was not.
Ow. What was that?
Yeah. So then, what is more what's the most terrifying thing you could do with this horrific device? Let's make it out of steel.
Let's make it out of steel, baby. Let's really batten down the hatches.
Let's just go for it. Let's make this as deadly as humanly possible.
Yep.
I was less worried about the card than the device itself at that point.
That is true. Just like, because again, if anything goes flying off, you're now shooting metal at people.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that doesn't happen.
And they do put this one in a blast shield box.
Yes.
When maybe they learned their lesson, but they with the metal wheels on the new device, it takes the speed up to 150 miles per hour with these playing cards.
That's too fast.
It's way too fast. It is scary fast.
Yeah.
And accurate. Did you notice that it's like it looks they're kind of hitting in the same. The grouping is pretty damn good with this thing.
Yeah. Not as good as Randy, but
no, of course not. This is where they brought in the ballistics gel, like you mentioned, to actually test the effect on human skin. And I thought it was a good idea. They compare the cards with their new super card throwing gun to a pellet gun and a crossbow. Two things that we know how dangerous they are. And the cards don't even compare. They don't even get close to what the pellet gun can do. And pellet gun's not typically considered a lethal device, even though it can hurt you, but it's not a particularly lethal device. The crossbow bolt, however, going through the ballistics gel, so satisfying.
I mean, just watching it like jiggle as it's like,
and it's so smooth. The arrow just right through.
Like hardly leaves a trail behind it. It's real clean.
Beautiful high-speed shot. Yeah. So satisfying. But because of what they found that the cards aren't that dangerous, we finally get Jamie agreeing to go under the gun for this one. And of course, if you're going to shoot cards at Jamie, he has to be shirtless.
He absolutely has to be shirtless.
And did you notice the camera really lingers on Jamie's shirtless body?
It does.
It really likes it.
They can't be the only ones.
No,
I mean,
of
like
course not.
it is just like an oddly, you wouldn't expect him to be that built. I know. And then it's just like, wait, no, this is like lumberjack strength.
Yeah, this is farm strong right here.
This is old school. This is every tough guy from every 40s movie. Like,
it does, to your earlier point. One thing I did like about this, jokes aside, was that everyone on the show is willing to put their body on the line and to be embarrassed or whatever. And so they're not asking like the Myth Turns or the build team to do anything that they wouldn't do. Adam and Jamie have been through it, and
several times in this episode, in fact.
Yeah. They shoot the cards at him here, and it does nick him. It actually draws blood, which was but I mean, obviously not deadly. Nowhere close to it.
And again, we get our final semi-robot moment of just, it stings.
Oh, I'm bleeding now. Look at that. I'm losing engine oil.
Never change, JV.
I also love that Adam said it was the first significant injury they've had on the show. And I was like, how about earlier when you napalmed the intern? Did you consider that a serious injury?
Also felt that way. And especially since they're like, well, maybe you should have gotten out of the way, Christine. Like, that's not what they say, but I do recall there being one thing at the very end that was just like, you could get hurt, like Christine.
Yeah.
I remember.
There is a tone. There is a tone of like, well, you were standing there.
Yeah. I was like, oh.
What other work environment would that be the excuse but M5?
What other work environment has exploding jawbreakers?
Apparently ours
any
is
work
get
environment.
One soon.
You beat me to it. Well done.
This one was, of course, busted once again pretty thoroughly on that one. And that is the end of our episode. We will be back next week with a legendary episode of the show, Ping Pong Rescue.
I don't know this one.
Could you actually lift a boat using ping pong balls, a sunken ship? This is one of those myths I think Adam has talked about a lot over the years, the logistics of it. It's a huge myth, and it looms large in myth-busting history. I'm really excited to dig into that one.
Well, I can't wait.
Be sure to go online, check that out wherever you find the episodes. And while you are hanging out online and fishing around for stuff to do, maybe give us a rating or leave a review, whatever platform you listen to us on, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, whatever. A reminder that we now have some video clips going up, particularly from our interviews as we find those. So you can find us on YouTube. Every single episode of the show is up, and those new video interviews are going up as we speak. So please, wherever you are, check us out, give us a rating, give us a review. We're dealing with machines, as always.
We'll take 4 stars.
As always, we will bargain. We will bargain for 4.
Absolutely bargain down. Without you even making an offer, we'll bargain.
You can leave a comment that's just like, this show's fine.
4 stars. This show's fine. 4 stars. Please, if you're out there, if you're listening, show us some signs of life.
But we will be back next week with that episode. And until then, thanks for listening.
Bye-bye, buddies.
Try This at Home is produced by Slugline Media. The show is written, hosted, edited, and shot onto the internet by Cliff Bumgardner and Harrison Stewart. Our music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. You can follow the show on Instagram @TryThisPod or email us trythisathomepod@gmail.com.